Welcome to the Fellas Podcast, the ultimate Formula One podcast for fans by fans, where we discuss all the happenings in the world of Formula One. Now, let's get into it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fellas. This week, we're going to talk about the race at Spa. However, before we get in, I'd just like that you hit those buttons for me to like, share, and subscribe. And gentlemen, let's get into it. What were your thoughts? I'll start off with Ralph this time. Go for it.
Thought it was a really good race. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed it a lot. But even before we do that, the lead up to the race, I think had some good information that we saw manifest during the race itself.
True. What's your overall take on the race, Simon? And then we'll go back and circle back.
Good race, exciting race. I think the last 5 have been really exciting. This one didn't leave out any excitement. Enjoyed it from start to finish. I enjoyed the qualifying, I enjoyed the racing, and I enjoyed the end to a certain degree. But we'll get into that.
Cool. So I want to say this, though. I'm going to hit this before you guys hit me with it. We still ain't figured out if McLaren has caught up to Red Bull yet. I'm just throwing it out there. All right. So now we're going to go to, what I found fascinating was the role the weather played in qualifying, and the fact that I'm going to throw out my 2 little tidbits, and that because of all of that, there wasn't a lot of dry running with their cars. However, Mercedes had to ditch their new package and go back to the old car. So what we saw on track this weekend was the old car. Mm-hmm. What do you say?
Yeah, it was. I saw reports of that as well, and it definitely was the right thing to do based on the performance they had. Good call on their part to switch it up and come out the way they did. Worked out well for them.
I'm with you, Ralph. I thought that initially Mercedes was going to have a hard time since they didn't have any practice on the dry. And I was like, well, yeah, Lewis is third, but they didn't have any telemetry, any data. So he's probably going to drop back to 6th or 7th. Russell's probably going to do the same. And I thought Ferrari got lucky because of the rain. So I was like, it's Verstappen's race to lose in that sense after qualifying. However, we saw a totally different Mercedes-Benz. Both cars, I think one had a little edge over everybody else, but other than that, both cars for Mercedes was competing, and that was good.
Yeah. Because I think the weather, the rain brought Lewis's talent out, right? How to navigate. He knows how to run that range setup. So I guess that's what aided him to kind of move up into the standing of where it was, right? And as usual, I'll say that because I'll also say that I still think McLaren, Red Bull, is a car to beat in speed because Verstappen stamped, his time on there, which they couldn't really come close to.
In qualifying, yes. In
qualifying. So, we'll see. But if we have done, let's roll into the race. Simon, kick it off. What were some of your takeaways from the race?
Well, let's just get rid of the elephant in the room for me. I thought Lewis ran an excellent race today.
Yes.
When we got to midway point, I really thought it was his race to win.
Right.
Technically, he did win the race today.
Right.
And I thought Lewis did a fantastic job trying to manage the race, manage the tires, get it in front of Charles, making sure Perez knew who was boss on the first couple of corners, really putting his stamp on the race from the very beginning, and then saying, all right, this is mine, and kind of flexed his shoulders a little bit until George made that call not to go in for his second pit. And then I started shaking my head. I was just like, uh-oh, I think he's going to lose this race as far as winning the race. I thought he was going to come in second. So, I don't want to go too far. I do have some questions for you guys as far as, did you think it was a good call for George to continue to be in front? That's one of my questions to you guys. But overall, I thought this was Lewis' race to lose, and I think he did an excellent job managing it.
Question: you mean a call to stay in front? When?
At the last 2 laps, right?
Yeah, I think it was.
I
really thought they were going to let Lewis by. I really did.
No, and Lewis doesn't want it that way, right?
All right, so let me say this then.
He'd rather take it than be let by, even though, you know what I'm saying? So I wasn't surprised that they didn't come over the radio to say that. I was a little bit more surprised at the time that I was like, wow, he can't catch him. You know, like he couldn't close up
the gap
close enough to him to really attack, right? And I did hear a report that the team, I don't know who it was, that came over the radio to Lewis to basically tell him, you know, to be careful going through there and, you know, on trying to attack George. And I found that, you know, I was like, Lewis is a, you know, 7-time world champion. He knows what to do. He's not going to throw it away, but okay, you know. But I don't think he had to give it up.
I have some thoughts on that whole thing with Lewis, right? Mm-hmm. My question is, what if Lewis was still with the team? I think there was a thing that came over and said, you guys could race, just be careful, right? I heard that. Right. However, I thought that if Lewis was still on the team, they would have given the orders to rotate position, right? But since Lewis is coming off the team, they kind of said, all right, let's go see what he's doing, because there was a picture on F1 and on the F1 broadcast showing where Toto Wolff was about to like hit the button on the thing, right? So I just have that feeling that since he's leaving, they kind of, all right, let's see what, you know, George is supposed to be our number one guy. Let's see what George could do, right? But I think if Lewis was still on the team, I think the orders would have come to say rotate, right? And let Lewis go through, because Lewis is still, you know, Lewis did an excellent job throughout the race to follow the procedure, and you know he was controlling the race the whole time, right? Mm-hmm. And instead of having the team, from a team perspective, they're not going to lose. It doesn't matter which car comes 1 or 2 for them, right? Because they're just going to get the points, right? However, but since Lewis has been with them for so long, and if he was still staying with them, I think at this point they would have just given the order to George and say, "Hey, we need to rotate." Lewis gets back from.
I hear you. I want to say this, that if that were the case, I don't think it would have been the right thing to do, right? Because, and the reason why I'm saying it is, when we go back to last week with Lando and Piastri, McLaren is the one that came in with that strategy to hit him first, right? Hit Lando before the lead car. Right. It appears that both Mercedes cars went out on a 2-stop strategy.
That's what support. That was that they reported that. Yes.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. It appears, right? Right. And what happened was, then you heard George come over the comms and say, I think we should think about a 1-stopper. So the reason why I say it's different is the change didn't come from the team. The change came from the driver out on track to the team to say, hey, I think we can do this. Right. And then the team said, okay. Right. So that's why I don't feel that if Lewis was staying, that they should switch them, because George made a call, like, while in the trenches that he felt would be better. Right. Which Lewis could have made that call himself if he felt it was better. But as he said, and we'll get to it later, because I watched the post race, he followed the strategy that they had discussed, So I don't think it would have been good for racing if he were staying, if they switched them back. Because George, that's like George coming in to the pits, and maybe they had a choice of hard and medium, and let's say he could choose either one. Lewis chose to take the mediums because that's what they all decided. But George was coming in and said, yo, I'm better on the hard. Give me another set. You're going to penalize him because he reacted to the situation in the race? I don't think that would be fair. So I wouldn't be in favor of them switching them.
I agree and I disagree at the same time. So I struggled with this a little bit. So where I struggled, and I agree with you, Ray, that, hindsight 2020, I thought they would have switched Lewis and Russell, because his tires were wearing out, Lewis had the better tires. Piastri is coming down very fast. Switch them so they don't waste time fighting each other in that sense. And then George Russell would stay behind Lewis in the tow and in DRS to fight off Piastri, and Lewis would have won the race. That was my thought process, making sure Piastri was not going to be second or first. And then, because Lewis had the better tires, he could have used that to keep Russell in front of Piastri using DRS in the tow. Because it was very difficult to pass anybody once you were in a DRS train there. You saw that. So that was my first reasoning for them to switch. Where I struggled was, all right, if that was Lewis and the roles were reversed, I would want Lewis to switch with Russell. And I said, no.
Right.
So I said, okay, it is what it is. They allowed them to battle. Piastri caught up pretty quick when they started battling. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, yes.
And that's when I was scared. I was just like, oh, man, is Piastri going to try and take Lewis? And Lewis is going to go to third place now because of this? I was worried about that, but it all worked out in the end.
I think just one last thing to say. I think if they, and I don't think they want to do this, I think if they get too caught up in orchestrating the win based on that, then it's not really racing anymore, right? Like last week, we know McLaren made a mistake. Like that was a mistake. Your lead car usually gets the better strategy, right? The better pit window, I should say, the better pit window. And for whatever reason, because they were trying to cover, they switched it, and that's the result of it. So I don't think, and that's part of the reason why team orders were banned for so long, because they didn't want teams orchestrating the win. They wanted that win to take place on the track. And I think George's gamble was a win that took place on the track. It wasn't a result of the team. The driver came back and said, hey, I think I could go all the way with these. Let's try it.
Well, Russell cheated anyway, so we can.
Anyway, so I hear what you're saying, right? I hear what you're saying with that, but I can remember back in the Bottas and era that they have rotated already to benefit the driver in the team, right? And I even remember once where I think Bottas gave up something to Lewis, and there was another race where it was coming around, and Lewis did the gentleman thing and said, well, he did this in such a race, so I'm going to rotate back so he can go. So that's because again, if we looked at the context, right, Lewis would have been the elder statesman of that team, right? 7-time world champion, right? So he's supposed to be the leader of the team. So I think in this go around, that's why I kind of reached a conclusion, said that they would have told Russell to rotate back, because yes, the other thing is that he's been on these tires for so long outside of the window what Pirelli said they should be operating in, right? And remember, we had a couple races years ago where they had the situation where tires are blowing up and people were, because they did not adhere to what Pirelli said was the tire pressure that they need to run in the tire, right? And the longevity, right? So that's, that was my take. And I hear what you guys say. I hear your side, Ralph, that, yes, it's not racing if they're going to drop team orders, right? Because, Lewis was lackluster at the interview after the race.
And there's a reason. I have a little bit on that. There's a reason.
And this is the second time Russell has done that, right? Because Russell has done that before, where he ordered different tires than was set out in the team. And before he dropped in, he said, yo, I want the sauce, right? Yeah. And the acquiescence gave it to him. And he came out ahead with that move also, right? Yeah. So, so that's kind of why I was saying then that, I see both points. I just have a feeling that maybe, because when I saw the picture of Wolf almost touching the button, it's as if he was close to say, hey, he was going to give some orders there because he didn't want two cars to be wrapped up and not finish, right? So, and I think that's why I kind of said, because Lewis managed the race for so long, right? It would just, it would be good for him to just say, hey, all right, we're going to just rotate on this one and go around, because I think it would come back back again, that if it were, in George's favor. It just seems, that's the deal that, how they run. No, but anyway,
I hear you. The one thing I'll say, that the one that you mentioned about Lewis and Bottas, I forgot the one where, yes, Bottas moved and let Lewis ahead. I forgot where that was, but I know it happened. The one where Lewis moved over to let him through was the arrangement was whoever was in front of Bottas, Lewis was quicker than Bottas. So the thing was for Bottas to move over to give Lewis a chance to attack the car in front. If he could get past that car, then obviously he would keep it. But if he couldn't get past that car, he would return the position so that Bottas could finish, where he really was. And what happened was Lewis couldn't catch that car. And what he did in the end, which everyone was surprised, and it was a good thing for him, is that he eased back over and gave it back to him because he was like, I couldn't achieve it. Have your position back. So that was fair play. That was fair play. And I don't think that's too much orchestration. But I hear you. I just my fear is that if we start getting into all of that, it becomes orchestrating. And then what does it do for the driver? Having said that, yes, we know Lewis is leaving, so they're not really concerned with how he feels next year.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. I just want to hit one thing though. They are orchestrating when they do these pit stop setup. So the orchestration is not really gone. This would be more obvious then, but when they're doing the pit stop, they are orchestrating.
Correct.
Right. So, and I wanted to hit on the thing with your question. I want to pose, Simon brought up with the DRS train, right? Because the drivers are complaining. Remember now, this car that was produced was supposed to be less aero dependent, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. What are your thoughts on that, Simon?
The aerodynamics, I think they've been messing and tinkering it all season, right? Or all for the last 2 seasons. And now they're, once you put the upgrades on there and then everyone's able to put upgrades, of course they're going to tinker with aerodynamics. I mean, that's just part of it. So I think it's par for the course. I think even the next generation that comes along, they're going to eventually put something on the car that's going to give it some more downforce and more lift and more speed. So that's just part of racing.
My take on it is that, yes, when they came out with the new rules, these cars were supposed to be less aerodynamic from the point of view of following another car. Because going back years in Formula One, it's already been known that the car in front of you, depending on the driver and the car can dictate the pace the car behind it can run. And if the car behind it is trying to push, Alonso did it earlier this year. I think it was in Melbourne. I remember Alonso was on, they came over the radio to Alonso to say, oh, so and such is trying to catch you. And Alonso came back and said, okay, yeah, I know. I'm just letting him destroy his tires. In other words, he was running in a way that he knew the turbulence was back there hitting that car. So if the car behind him was trying to close on him, you're going to destroy your tires and then you're done. So they were trying to design that out of the cars. And evidently it's back where you have that train coming around again where, the car in front can dictate the pace, which is part of the reason why Max or anyone wanting to win, they want to get pole so they could run away and get clear air. Because it was said in this race, I think Oscar, he jumped out and he had clear air and he was flying.
And that's the reason. That's one of the reasons why Russell stayed in front as well. I mean, he had the clear air, so it was easy for him. Right. Plus the weight difference.
Okay. We're not going to go there yet. So I also heard for this event, I don't know if you guys heard it, that the FIA modified the DRS zones. They made them shorter.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. So they also said that played a factor in it, that the cars weren't able to build up enough speed, right, to execute the pass at the end. Because as we saw with Lewis and Russell, for whatever reason, Russell was able to get better drive off of the corners than Lewis was. Right. And when you couple that with the DRS activation zone being lesser, right. And, if you got off the corner quicker, you could keep the gap, basically. Right. That was it, and there was no coming back from that. So, they said, those were the things that kind of contributed to that stagnation in a way, right? That they couldn't do it. But, and I agree that they made changes to the cars to during the time to make it perform better in one area that might have impacted the what the FIA was trying to achieve, right? With the more passing, because Even Max was complaining that he couldn't get out of the train, the DRS train, to do anything. So it's I don't know what the FI is gonna do if they can do anything to address that. Say like next year, right, during the next year season. So the other one I wanted to hit on is I'm concerned that our favorite driver is going to a team that's like disappearing. What are your thoughts on that?
Ferrari?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. They have a lot of work to do. They
came in third.
Huh?
Came in
yeah. Third. But still a distant compared to. I mean,
third and six, right? Third and six.
Yeah. Lando. I mean, not Lando. Piastri was basically 1 second behind George at the end. That's how he finished. Right. So McLaren, if they stay in that zone, they should be pretty good next year, you would hope. This is what I hope, that Lewis does what Michael did for Ferrari, where you go and you assemble a team and you work out all these kinks. You would think an established team like Ferrari would, have that. But you got to work that out, so then you build a team around you so then you could go win. Because they definitely have a lot of work to do. Just like Mercedes had, just like McLaren had. Remember, what has it been? I think, has it been a decade, since McLaren has been a world champions? It's I'll have to look that up, but it's been a long time. And look where they are now. It took them all this time.
I think Ferrari still in the top 5, top 6 is good. If they were performing like last 8th or 9th or 10th, I think Lewis would be in trouble for next year. But I think they'll make adjustments. I think they'll make with Lewis's expertise coming over, developing a strong team. They know what's at stake. Right? It's not just Lewis, it's Ferrari. Right? And the reason why they went after Lewis was to really get their name back on the podium. And Leclerc is, in my opinion, a real strong driver. I think he's a champion, in my opinion. He probably needs someone like Lewis on his team. He probably needs some better direction. And even last year, this year they're doing a better job. But last year they were asking him for his advice while he was driving. And to me, it was just it was Boy Scouts, right? In my opinion, it wasn't really a professional setting for Leclerc. And I think Leclerc, even without that, is still coming in top 5, top 3. Still, third in the points, and really only 22 points behind Lando right now. So he's 100 points behind Verstappen. So he's still up there. And Ferrari's not doing well, and he's still 3rd place overall in points. So I think they're okay. I just think there's going to be some tweaks and some changes next year that will get them back to the top.
Well, I hope so, because I see them. I see one team rising, and he's leaving, and the other team that he's going to is not as dominant as they were at the beginning of the season, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just just a little bit some concern. But what do you think about my man Piastri? I told you, he is ready to rock and roll, bro. Yeah. Norris better watch his back, because that dude is coming. He is coming for blood.
He should. Yeah. After what happened in the last race, he's. It appears he's running the race. He should. He's like, hey, I'm out here, because even at the start, Lando tried to go around the outside of him. He gave him room, right at the start of the race. He gave him room, but Lando went a little bit too much and went off track. So I was like, yeah, okay, Oscar, he's there. He's not backing out. It cost Lando to drop 3 places back as a result of that little off that he had. So Piastri, yeah, he's got his elbows out. I think he's running a little harder because he realized, like, hey, I got to be out for self as well, for the team, but out for self.
Piastri is letting everybody know that I am just as good as Lando. Mm-hmm. You're going to respect me, and you're going to understand that if it comes down to 1st and 2nd place, we're gonna fight for it. And I believe right now, whether it's qualifying, whether it's racing, Piastri is saying, okay, I'm going to do my best for the team. I'm going to play a team player, but when I see my opportunities, I'm going to take it without asking.
Yeah. That's how it should be.
Mm-hmm. He's a driver, because you saw the pass he put on the outside. He doesn't play. He'll take it to the outside.
Yeah.
And
he's humble. I like how humble he is.
yeah, I'm a little worried about that.
No.
Why?
Because
It's working for him.
Yeah.
Oh, hold up. Just hear me out on this one. Everybody has to show emotion some way, somehow.
Mm-hmm.
He's too cool. So for the way he operates and what they say, he's too cool. He has to be showing emotion somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
You would.
Right. Okay.
But if you're losing, yes. If you're winning,
right. His demeanor, in a sense, reminds me Mika Hakkinen, world champion. Flat. As far as what they interviewed, flat. Put him in the car. Yeah, watch out.
And he said that in an interview. I don't know if you guys saw the interview before the race. He was sitting down with a young lady that does the commentary during the race.
Who said Mika? Or Oscar.
Oscar.
Yeah.
Oscar was in an interview with one of the commentators right before the race, because I kind of watch up to the race as well. And she was just, asking him about Lando last week in the race, and he gave the most professional answer I've ever heard. He said, "Listen, I'm gonna do whatever the team asked me to do. Right? I'm going to, be a race car driver for McLaren. That's who I am. Right?" And he says, but basically he was summarizing and saying, but just don't take my kindness for weakness.
There you go.
That's basically what he was saying.
Yes.
So I hear you, Ray, but no, I think his cool demeanor has gotten him to Formula One. I think his steady, not to panic, doesn't overreact, and like, okay.
There's a saying: "Still waters run deep."
Yeah,
that's him. When you measure, it's okay. You measure, but you see where he does his talking.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it's going to change if he wins 2 championships or a championship, because once you get to that elite level, yeah, I think emotions are going to start coming in if you make silly mistakes and you're like, but most champions have a little edge to them, and it may come out. But I think he's maintaining it and controlling it right now because he still thinks he's got stuff to prove.
Yeah. Okay. And he's not in the full pressure, he's under pressure. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but he's still building up to win his. So he's doing what he's supposed to. He's battling his teammate, right? And he's also battling the rest of the field. And you could see that he's pretty consistent, right? He's been pretty consistent in the right direction, as opposed to another team's second driver who's pretty consistent in the negative direction. So
Perez.
That person would be the one lashing out. But for Oscar, measured. It's all right.
Okay. All right.
Measured.
Well, I'll say that.
I like that word. Another big word for you, man.
Okay. Well, I'll say this. We'll see, because I think it's on in the McLaren arena, between Oscar and Norris, because I think, I agree. Norris dirtied his face last week, and that was not called for, right? Some people say it was called for, some other, whatever, but it dirtied his face. And I think he's taking that as a note, and he's going to, step up and do that. And he's going to send a message. And I think, because, I've been always saying this whole season that you got to watch out Piastri. Everybody think he's young, he's number 2 driver. He's going after it.
He has the ability, because if you think about it, within the teams, that's what's going on. There's usually a driver by their performance, whether deliberate or not, dirtying the face of their teammate, right? So we know Max, Sergio has mud all over his body, right? Lance Stroll is starting to strip off some of them, but we don't know what's going on with Alonso, because we know if Alonso has a car that performs, he's going to be light years ahead. So that's normal. George and Lewis are battling, and same thing, kind of thing. So that's supposed to happen.
All right, so I'm going to go to the topic. I'm just going to say it. Perez is gone. Okay. Yeah. He's not going to be there. I'll be surprised to see him after the summer break. Yeah. Right. However,
in 3 weeks. In 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see. Yes, because they're going to have testing between. They're going to do
Liam
testing
Lawson
between
and Danny Rick.
Yes, exactly. And I'm shooting for Lawson, right? Because I don't think Ricardo's got it. But I want to say that the politics. It seems like the politics that run heavy and deep in Red Bull, right? Because this would be the 3rd or 4th driver they chewed up and threw away. That was a decent driver, right? So I'm kind of wondering what is going on in that environment that causes that type of stuff, because could it be really that toxic with, Helmut Marko and all those guys, but because he's done. Ricardo, what you call it, he's gone.
Sergio's over. Yeah,
Sergio's not there anymore. He's gone, right?
Sergio,
and I don't think,
Red Bull is over, but not Sergio himself, right?
right. Well, that's the only context we're talking. Sergio Red Bull, right? I'm not talking
Yeah,
about anything
yeah.
else. It's just Sergio Red Bull. But I think Lawson should get the nod to see if he can stomach, because if the politics is heavy, I can see Ricardo coming in because he already was there before, so he understood what was going on. He may be able to navigate it, right? And he's been stepping up and trying, improve his finishing in the last couple of races. But I still not sure if he's the guy for it. I think I'd more give the nod to Lawson and say let him take a shot on it.
Well, they're doing the right thing. They're going to test them and see, right? But I am leaning more to Lawson as well, over Daniel, because Daniel hasn't really been the Daniel we knew when he was, racing at Red Bull and stuff. So we don't know, ever since he went to McLaren. The other thing is, it's all those teams are high pressure, and I would expect Mercedes, McLaren, and Red Bull and Ferrari, that those teams, you better have a strong mental state as a driver going in there, because they're not coddling you. You're not, if you need coddling, that's not the place to be. That's not the team. So I think it's a very tough environment, and you're going up against Max. So the first thing is, are you close to Max in time? Even if you can't beat him, are you right behind them? Okay, they'll work with you. But if you're not performing, hit the road. I believe it was Gasly used to run for Red Bull. They got rid of him. And then they brought in Albon, and Albon was a different driver, and they tried to coax him, and then they got rid of him too, because, you have to perform. They're not paying you the money to come there to look good.
I was thinking maybe at the end of the year. I don't know about summer break, but I think he's a good driver. He's top 10 still. Chemistry is just not working out at Red Bull. It was there the first year and there a little bit last year, but I don't know what's going on this year. I don't know what argument happened, something happened in the team, and the chemistry and the flow is just completely off to where I think he's maximizing his talents right now, which is a shame to say, but I think it's some sort of issue with the team and the driver.
So I got another question for you. So he gets let's go. You think there's going to be another team that will pick him up
this year? No, not this year. Maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, he's still a top 10 driver. I don't know why you would not consider it as an owner.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
I would think so. One of the midfield teams or lower down, it would be good to get him in, because then you could get information as to how Red Bull did things that could help you advance, even in your procedures of your team or anything like that, from the driver. He's driven a top car. He could come in and say, well, this car doesn't do this and it doesn't do this, and and they could try to work with it. I'd be surprised if he's not in Formula One again anymore. But I don't know who's looking for drivers right now, because we still don't know where Carlos is going. I would be surprised if he's gone. And I mean, Daniel might be going. We don't know either. So that might be another spot for him.
Yeah, Carlos is. We don't talk about that at all. I mean, Carlos is taking his sweet time, kind of negotiating his next move, and I'm sure he has suitors looking for him. I'm sure he has people, putting messages in his ear, but he's just taking his sweet time. Maybe he's going to do it after the summer break or during the summer break and kind of make up his mind what he's going to do. But he's been quiet, and no one's really been, pushing him and pressing for him to give us, an answer, which is respectable. You don't want to press somebody if they haven't already thought about it. But yeah, I think that's an interesting take on where Perez, Carlos, and Ricardo are going to go next year.
Will Buxton did ask Carlos in the post race, and he didn't answer. He goes, no, I'm taking my time, and I'm to make sure that the decision I make is the right one for me. So he's not taking
which is good. Is right. That's good for him, because the thing is switched. right? The players have switched, they're switching positions. So he's trying to see. But after the summer break, he's going to have to make it up at least by mid session next, that second half. He's got to come out and say something. I think that he's got to come out and say something.
Yeah.
Right. And then go from there. But it's just, I just wonder, right? Because, if Sergio still stays in, he's going to go back from where he's going back to where he came from, right? Because he was Force India, which was an underfunded team again, right? And, that's where he showed his talent. So that's what, kind of puzzles me to say you're the team with a top thing and all of a sudden you were going good and it's like, poof, somebody flicked the switch and you're like, that puts something on you that now you're just going in the wrong direction, right? So it's just, it's just surprising.
Well, that's the thing. Like you said, we know he's been strong. So we just don't know what has happened. I think Simon mentioned it in one of the past episodes. Could it be something personal in his life? Or you just mentioned Helmut Marko. He doesn't seem like an easy person to, like he'll put pressure on you hard.
Yeah.
He's very blunt. He seems to be very blunt. So I don't know. Maybe his head got rattled and he's just off his game, and he can't find his way back to center himself. I don't know.
But the thing is, right? The thing that's I hear that, but there's so many drivers that have shown up where this has kind of happened to them. So and these drivers have been around, have stayed in Formula One and performed okay, right, with the equipment they were given. So it makes me wonder what is going on in the background of Red Bull that causes this effect to these drivers, right? So, I just, I wanted to throw that out there. Is that, maybe it's what happens behind the scenes of Red Bull might be having this negative impact.
I truly believe it, man. I'm using Verstappen as an example. You kind of have to be crazy to deal with crazy, right? So if something crazy is happening there, he's able to deal with it. Just based on the language he uttered last week, right, or the week before, to his team, it's like he was pretty much blunt, saying "F you" to the team or anybody that thinks I was being rude to the team, because you don't know what's going on when behind the scenes. So I'm not being rude to the team, kind of response. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That and also he knows what he knows and is confident in what he's capable of. So just like what's happening with Sergio, right? Sergio is not performing. The team is on him. Max is performing, and the car's not the way he wants it. He's on the team. That's fair. That's fair. That's the realm they're operating in. It's like they just want positive results and you to win. Period. And top driver will dish it out. Alonso was famous for that. He was dumped on McLaren one time when the car wasn't up to par. He said, "I'm driving an F3 car," right? That was, and all the commentators are, "Oh, that's it." But I was like, "Yeah, but he's a world champion. He's right. The car is crap, because if he wasn't driving up to the top level, the team would be all over him." So that's just par for the course.
All right. So the other one we want to hit up on, we kind of touched on coming back, is, well, I know you guys all heard that the finishing order got shuffled, right? Because, Russell got disqualified because he was 1 point something kilos too light after they pulled fluid out the car. So, but what I want to add before I throw it out to you is this. I noticed something was strange, and you guys probably noticed it, that typically when they finish a race, right, they circle the whole track. This time, guess what happened? They didn't circle the track. Right. And when you circle the track, you know what you're picking up? Rubber.
Rubber.
And so you're picking up weight, right? Yeah. So even though I think the team already knew probably beforehand that this was going to be the way they're going to do it, because they didn't want him to go around the 4 miles to come back. So, so they should have, in theory, made a compensation for it. But I think that's what caught him out, right? Because, I was wondering, I thought it was like 13 kilos or something like that. And I was like, oh, then it would have made sense why, the hard tire wouldn't have worn out on you so much, because you're lighter than what they expected it to be. But I feel for him in that sense that, just because they modified how they finished and didn't allow him to go pick up all that rubber, he got penalized for being underweight. But at the same time, if the FIA, I want to say the FIA must have alerted the teams of this new procedure before the race. And they should have said, oh, wait a minute, we're not going to be able to pick up that extra stuff that we get. So we need to make sure that we leave, we do other compensation, maybe put a little ballast or whatever it is in the car so we could make the minimum weight.
Here's my thing. Lewis didn't go around either, and his car was fine. I'm still at a loss. They said it was 1.5 kilos, which is about 3 pounds. And my initial question when I heard it is like, well, how? Like, how does that happen? Because I know the cars have ballast, just like you mentioned, so they move it around to change the handling of the car, how it operates. Yeah. So I was like, okay, it's 3 pounds, but how? No, nothing has come out yet to say how, and what was it? VAR back in the day where they got caught cheating because they had the fuel tank where basically it had a hidden tank in there and they were pumping fuel. I forget the whole thing, and they got caught and then they got thrown out as well. My initial thought was, is it something like that? But I didn't understand why, and it still isn't clear. I'm hoping it comes out in the next few days. How, that him not picking up rubber and Lewis not picking up rubber, his car's lighter. Why is that? I would like to know. I'm going to be watching to see if I get a clear answer as to what really happened with his car.
You're not going to pick up 3 pounds of rubber going around the track.
Come on, of course you will. You don't know how much rubber break. You don't know. You're going to put a hole down the circumference because the rubber also helps the ride height of the car. Also, because there's a minimum ride height you need to have too.
Not 3 pounds. If you picked up a pound or two, I can see that. But 3 pounds of rubber, that sounds a lot.
It's 4 miles. You got 4 miles of rubber to pick up, Simon. Come on.
I hear you, Ray. I hear you. I think you're stretching though. But I think things like this happen when you have a challenging weekend. Qualifying, practice. They probably left something off for qualifying or for practice just to see whether or not it was going to help. They didn't put it back on when the race started, something like that. It's just when you have a challenging weekend, they probably just missed something, and it backfired for Russell. It sounded like he was the only one that it backfired on, so that's kind of messed up. But I feel bad for him, and then I don't. So
understandable. I think it's a team mistake, possibly, because as I said, they had to shift package from the new packages. They had to get rid of everything and go back to the old. And I think it was a team mistake, or somewhere along the line they forgot to put something in there to make sure that the car would meet minimum weight after the race. I think even from a Lewis perspective, he got the win, but I don't think it's a treasured win because it was handed to him as opposed to him taking it.
No, he's gonna take that win.
He's gonna take that. He ran hard.
Yeah, you don't see how upset he was for not winning that race. Oh, he's gonna take those points.
Well, no. Hold up. Let me be clear. I'm not saying he will not take the points, but I think him being a champion, or if I were in the shoes of champion, you want to pass him on the track to send that message, right? And even though you're getting it because he was cheating, and if it was just a mistake, what I'm saying, it's still that he still was able to hold you off on older tires, right? Because my take is that when you're on track, you want to send messages, right? Because I think Lewis has said his dad or whatever said, you do your talking on the track, right? And I think Lewis would have wanted to be able to. It would have been more jovial for Lewis if he was able to walk around him on track, even though he had these, the older tires, and then to find out that he was still underweight when he did it, right? So I'm just saying, he'll take it, but I think it's going to be like a lackluster, no?
Well, I think to say it, I think I can say it here. You let me know. Yes, I saw his demeanor in the post race when they interviewed him, and he was asked if he was happy with his P2, and his response was he's happy for the team. But I was watching his facial expression, everything. Like from the minute the person asked him, I was watching and I was like, ooh, he's upset, right? Lewis upset. Then they went on to say, they asked him if there's anything he would have done differently with the strategy. was a one-stop strategy an option for him? He said, that would have been my own strategy, right?
He had 2 sets of hards, so yes.
No,
He had
right,
2 sets of brand new hards.
Right, but when he again answered that, I was like, yo, he's upset about that George switch from what I guess the strategy, right? From a 2-stopper to a 1-stopper, and that wasn't offered to him. That's what I got.
How tough were the last laps behind George? How much were you tempted to attack and to try to do it?
I mean, I was trying to get closer, obviously, but George did a great job on going long on the tires. Every stint I had tires left, but the team pulled me in. So, unfortunate, but it is one of those days.
Okay,
Go ahead, Ray.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just real quick, I wouldn't put it past that during a team meeting, Lewis said, why don't we try a one-stop strategy?
Maybe.
I bet you that came up, and they were all like, no, we're going to do 2-step strategy. And as soon as Russell said that during the race, he was probably like livid.
Okay.
It's probably his idea.
Well, this, what I'm saying, can go to what we were discussing earlier about Sergio, what could possibly be happening with the team, blah, 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 blah. I checked out Peter Windsor's take. And Peter Windsor said after the race, the interaction for the team for George was hugs and kisses, and congratulations. And he said Lewis was by himself in the weigh-in area. He believes that since Lewis is leaving and George is now the main driver for the future, they all rally around George, right? So when he said that, I flashed back to what I saw in the interview, and I was like, okay, could there be some behind-the-scenes preferential to George? Because that's their guy now, he's staying. So they're giving him the preferential treatment as far as one-stopper and all of this, and Lewis is like, you're the odd man out. Possible, because...
Yes, something like that has happened.
Possible.
Something.
Possible.
And when you said that would have been my choice, to me, that tells me, and of course this is all hypothetical, but that tells me that he probably brought it up in a team meeting that, based on what all the information we got on Friday when it was dry, I bet you we can do a one-stopper with the 2 hard tires that we have.
Right. And he did ask during the race when he realized George was now ahead and not pitting, am I close enough to him? He was asking his guys to be like, because he's starting to realize, like, wait a minute, he's going to win it. He could win it, not me, after, all that I've done. So,
yeah, because if I had to flash back to when George switched tires on him, and that's a similar thing that happened, I think, back then. So, all right, well, everyone, thanks for listening on our opinion for this race. We'd love to hear something from you guys in the comments. Out until after the summer break. Ciao.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.